My name is Diana Myers. I'm 67, retired early from my job as a senior, systems analyst in Trenton, New Jersey. I've been widowed for 8 years, and after my husband passed, I opened my home to help my daughter Alyssa, her husband Derek, and their 2 children. I thought I was doing the right thing. I wanted my grandkids to grow up in a stable home, not bouncing between leases and financial stress. I'd always been Grandma Di, loving, present, dependable. But slowly, that identity began to feel like a doormat. They moved in 2 years ago after Derek lost his job and Alyssa said it was temporary. I welcomed them warmly. I gave them the upstairs master. I downsized to the guest room. I handed over my credit card for emergencies. I paid for groceries, school, supplies, and even Wi-Fi. And I did it with love until love became expected, then demanded. It started with rolled eyes whenever I gave advice. Derek would joke about how I didn't understand tech or social media. Alyssa began gatekeeping my grandkids' schedules like I was the help. One day I offered to help the kids with their homework, math, my strong suit. My 14-year-old grandson looked up and said, "Mom says you don't get how school works anymore. It's different now." And my daughter just nodded. But the worst came during dinner. We were talking about budgeting. I gently asked Alyssa if they had looked for jobs recently. Derek smirked and said, "You wouldn't get it, Diana. You're from a different era. The world moved on. You're too old to understand how anything works. Now." The room went silent, not from guilt, but from how normal that disrespect had become. And I laughed, quietly, because they thought I was clueless. They forgot what I used to do for a living. They forgot who paid the bills. They forgot the system they relied on was wired by me. That night, I sat in the dark of my room, staring at my dusty certificates framed on the wall. Microsoft, Cisco, CompTIA, cybersecurity certifications, systems I helped design, policies. I implemented at my job network security protocols I trained people half their age to manage. And now I was being dismissed like I was some outdated relic. That's when I made the decision, not to argue, not to fight, but to act. I didn't need revenge, I needed respect. And I was about to earn it the only way I knew how, through a quiet, surgical reset. The plan started the next morning with a single click. The first domino fell with the Wi-Fi. Early that morning, I logged into the router settings using the same credentials I'd set up 2 years ago because, of course, I was the one who installed the entire system. They never bothered to change a thing. They assumed I didn't know how. I created a secondary network, one for myself, password protected, with restricted visibility. Then I disabled the primary. Just like that, no Netflix, no TikTok, no online games, no streaming podcasts, no remote job hunting. Silence. Digital silence. At 7:13 a.m., Derek yelled from upstairs, "Babe, is the Wi-Fi down again?" Alyssa responded, "Mom, did you forget to pay the bill again?" Again. I made coffee and sat on the porch. I watched them through the window as they scrambled. Derek restarted the modem. Alyssa unplugged the router. My grandson, Liam, was pacing. Like a trapped animal, he had an online test. My granddaughter, Kayla, was halfway through editing a dance video for her followers. Their worlds were crumbling over something they thought I couldn't possibly understand. Alyssa stormed outside. "Mom, seriously, the Wi-Fi's out again. Can you call support?" I sipped my coffee. "Already did. Must be an outage. Maybe it's the old wires in the house," I said with a smile. The second strike came when Derek tried to use the card I'd added him to 2 years ago. Back. When he needed to rent a car for job interviews. It was declined. So was Alyssa's. I had removed them as authorized users and reset all passwords. By mid-morning, chaos had bloomed like weeds. No Uber Eats, no Amazon order, no grocery delivery. At noon, I deleted the shared Spotify family, plan they used daily. I canceled the Hulu account, and the shared Netflix profile, I renamed it Find a Job. And still, I said nothing. That evening, Alyssa walked in from the kitchen, arms crossed. "Did you change something with the cards? Derek said his got declined at the gas station." "Oh?" I blinked innocently. "I figured since you both said I didn't understand how the world works anymore, you wouldn't need my accounts." She froze. A flicker of panic crossed her face. "But Kayla has a project due tomorrow. She needs the internet." "I'm sure you can figure it out," I said, walking away. "You're young, adaptable, unlike me." The house didn't speak to me for 2 days. Well, except the grandkids. Kayla asked if I could print her homework. Liam knocked to borrow my hotspot. He even said, "Please." But Alyssa and Derek? They acted like I'd committed war. Then came the third move, a quieter one. While they were still trying to troubleshoot their way through tech hell, I printed out a copy of the household expenses. Mortgage, still in my name, utilities, streaming, Wi-Fi, phone plans, groceries, insurance, everything. I highlighted every line item they benefited from. And underlined the ones I was cutting off next week if things didn't change. I slid the folder under their bedroom door like an eviction notice of truth. That night, I heard Alyssa crying in the bathroom. I almost felt bad, almost. But then, I remembered the way she rolled her eyes at dinner, the way Derek dismissed me like I was a fossil with no value. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was reminding them who held this house together. Not with control, with competence. And they were, finally starting to notice. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I was in the kitchen making a stew, beef and barley, the kind that simmers low and fills the air with something like warmth. I heard the knock on my bedroom door. Not the hallway, not the stairs. My door. Alyssa's voice was soft. "Mom, can we talk?" It had been 3 days since I shut it all down. No cards, no Wi-Fi, no grocery apps, just real-life inconvenience. Reality, unplugged. I wiped my hands and opened the door. There she was, my daughter, the same girl who used to play with Legos on the living room floor, who used to hold my hand when she was scared of the dark. Now standing in yoga pants, messy bun, and stress across her face like war paint. Derek hovered behind her, looking like a teenager caught sneaking out after curfew. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They sat on the edge of the bed like guests, not family. I could see it in their eyes, uncertainty, guilt, maybe even shame, but they didn't know how to begin. So I did. "I take it the outage lasted longer than expected?" Derek rubbed his neck. "Look, we just didn't realize how much we were leaning on you." I raised a brow. "Didn't realize or didn't care?" Alyssa winced. "Okay, we deserve that." She paused, then continued. "You're right, about everything. We were ungrateful, and Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. "I let myself believe you were old-fashioned because it was easier than admitting how much we needed you, how much we rely on you." I stayed silent. Let her fill the space, let the truth echo. "We weren't trying to be cruel," she said, "but we were. Comfortable, too comfortable. And I let Derek make jokes at your expense. I let the kids talk back. I didn't correct them. I didn't respect you, not like I should have." I watched her, not angry, just tired, tired of giving and being invisible, of being useful but never valued. Derek cleared his throat. "You've done a lot for us. We know that now. And I think we got a little too used to you being the fallback. We should have stepped up." I looked him in the eyes. "You still can." That's when I handed them a second folder. This one was different. Inside, I had printed out a 3-month action plan, job applications, budget sheets, a list of free resources in Trenton for employment and career training. Even 2 open IT support roles from my old company, both entry-level, perfect for someone like Derek. "I'm not kicking you out," I said. "Not yet. But this house? It doesn't run on apologies. It runs on effort. And if you're under this roof, you need to contribute." They nodded, slowly, honestly. "But," I added, "if I hear you're too old to understand, ever, again, I'll shut down more than the Wi-Fi." That made Derek laugh, genuinely this time, and Alyssa let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. Truly. I believed her. But it wasn't the apology that mattered. It was the fact that for the first time in years, they saw me not as Grandma Di, the backup plan, but as Diana, the woman who built her life from nothing, raised a daughter, on grit and grace, and still had enough strength to draw a line in the sand. That night, we ate stew together. No phones, no background shows. Just a table full of steam, cracked biscuits, and the fragile beginnings of earned respect. It wasn't over, but it was a start. The next morning, I brewed 2 pots of coffee, one for me, one for them. Old habits die hard, but boundaries, those were brand new. I didn't call anyone to breakfast. I didn't remind Alyssa about the appointment I'd scheduled at the workforce center. I didn't check if Derek had followed up on the job leads I gave him. They wanted independence? Fine. Let's see what it looks like without training wheels. I sat at my desk, logged into my private Wi-Fi network, and opened my emails. Mostly old friends, a few from the community center, and one from a retired colleague offering part-time consulting work. For the first time in months, I smiled, not because I had to, but because I was back. Around 10 a.m., I heard movement upstairs, not lazy footsteps, hustled ones. Alyssa came, down-dressed properly, jeans, blouse, her hair combed neatly. "I'm going to the Trenton Career Resource Center," she said, almost too casually. I nodded without looking up. "Let me know if you need bus fare. The car's staying with me." She nodded, no complaints. That was new. Then Derek came down a half hour later, khakis, polo, resume folder in hand. "There's a walk-in interview downtown for one of the IT support jobs you mentioned. I figure it's worth a shot." I looked at him, really looked. "Good," I said simply. "Don't forget to mention you managed our household tech for 2 years." He blinked. I didn't really..." "You did now," I replied. "Sell it." He smirked. "Yes, ma'am." After they left, I took a deep breath. The silence was different now. Not angry, not cold, just peaceful. Later that afternoon, I sat with Kayla and Liam at the dining table. Without phones, without distractions. We played Scrabble, my favorite. Kayla grumbled at first, but then got into it. Liam rolled his eyes at the dictionary rules, but I caught him smiling when he beat me with quantum. I told them stories about what I used to do, how I built databases and trained people who once thought floppy disks were magic. Kayla asked, "Grandma, why didn't you ever tell us that before?" "Because no one ever asked," I said. That night, Alyssa came into the kitchen while I was pouring tea. "I got a call back," she said, breathless. "Part-time admin work. It's not much, but it's something." "It's everything," I told her. "First steps always are." She hugged me without asking. I let her. Then she pulled back. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why didn't you yell at us, or just throw us out?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "Because yelling doesn't teach, and throwing you out would have been easier. This way, you learn to never take comfort for granted again." She nodded. "We deserved the shutdown. You deserved the lesson." We sat in silence for a moment before I said something I hadn't in years. I'm proud of you for trying, but don't do it for me. Do it for your kids. They're watching. I saw her eyes water again. Not from shame this time, but from realization. She left me in peace after that. It wasn't just the Wi-Fi I reset. It was the house, the hierarchy, the balance. The guilt I once carried for not doing enough was gone. Because I had done more than enough. Now it was time for them to carry the weight they never realized I bore for so long. 3. Weeks later, the rhythm in the house had changed, and not just on the surface. The Wi-Fi was back on, but they paid for it. The groceries were split. Alyssa handled breakfast and school lunches. I took care of dinner when I felt like it. Derek had started gig work as a tech assistant for small businesses in the area, and though the pay was humble, it gave him purpose. He walked a little taller, less sulk, more structure. And the kids? They watched it all unfold. Liam asked if I could help him build a science project about circuitry, said I probably knew way more than YouTube. And Kayla, after a quiet moment during dinner, said, I didn't know Grandma used to fix computer systems. That's kind of cool. I smiled, not needing the applause, just the recognition. One evening, I heard Derek talking to a friend on the phone in the den. She's sharp, man. I used to think she was just old school, but no, she's legit. Did you know she used to set up secure networks for hospitals? I'm pretty sure she could hack into NASA if she wanted to. I chuckled silently in the hallway. Not because I would, but because I could. Alyssa, too, had begun asking for advice, not out of habit, but out of respect. She brought home flyers for career night at the local school and asked if I'd talk to the kids about life skills and tech from a real-world perspective. Who, me? I teased. She smiled sheepishly. You're the only one who's got both. That Friday night, after the kids went to bed, Alyssa and Derek asked if I'd join them on the back porch. It had been a long week, but I agreed. They had a small bottle of wine, 3 glasses, and a warm blanket. I sat down, not knowing what to expect. Alyssa handed me a wrapped box. We know this doesn't even come close to what we owe you, but we wanted you to have it. Inside was a custom-made plaque. It read, "To the woman who wired this home with love, discipline, and brilliance. You didn't just build systems. You built us." For the first time in a while, I couldn't speak. My throat caught. The words, the acknowledgement, they hit deeper than any apology ever could. "Thank you," I whispered. Derek looked over. "You didn't just teach us how to survive without Wi-Fi. You taught us how to plug back into real life." And that's when I knew I had done something bigger than a power play. I had restored balance, not just between generations, but between dependency and dignity. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the plaque on my nightstand, and I thought of my late husband, Richard, of how we always said that the best revenge was living with grace and strategy. They thought I was just a grandmother, but I was the architect. The quiet storm behind the screen. And finally, they saw me. Spring crept into Trenton with warm rain and late blooms, and with it came clarity, real, irreversible clarity. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table updating my will, not because I was bitter, but because I was awake. For too long, I'd lived on default mode, serving, supporting, sacrificing. And now that balance had returned, I knew it was time to take it one step further. I called a meeting. Just me, Alyssa, and Derek. They looked nervous as they sat across from me. No Wi-Fi crisis this time. No card rejections. Just a plain folder in my hand and something I'd practiced saying for weeks. I've decided to restructure how this house works, financially and legally, I began. Because the next time I'm gone, I don't want confusion or entitlement. Alyssa's eyebrows drew close. What do you mean? I spoke with an attorney, I said calmly. The house will go into a trust, one that can only be inherited under certain conditions. Derek shifted in his chair. What kind of conditions? He asked, voice cautious. You both must be employed, consistently, for 5 years, I said. The kids must graduate. No debts tied to my name. And most importantly, I leaned in. This house must never become a place of freeloading. Again, not for your kids, not for their spouses. This home was built on sweat, not laziness. The trust enforces that. Alyssa's mouth opened, but then she closed it again. Processing. I'm not doing this to punish you, I continued. I'm doing this to protect what I've spent a lifetime building. If you want to pass it down, you have to prove you can uphold it. There was a silence so thick you could feel the generations shift in the room. Derek finally said, I respect that. And he meant it. Alyssa nodded slowly. I'm not upset. Actually, I get it now. You're not just preparing for when you're gone. You're preparing us for when we have to stand on our own. Exactly. That weekend, we painted the garage. Together. Kayla helped patch drywall. Liam mowed the yard. We made a chore chart, not for me, but for them. The house was no longer just mine. It was ours, shared in responsibility, not just benefit. And it felt like home again. Not because it was warm or full of laughter, but because it had boundaries. It had rules. It had respect. The day the legal documents were finalized, I received a call from the community center. They asked if I'd speak to a group of older women about personal empowerment and tech independence. I agreed without hesitation. As I stood at that podium weeks later, gray hair in a tight bun, glasses perched, and my scarred but steady voice echoing through the room, I told them everything. About the Wi-Fi, about the cards, about the plaque, and about the moment I stopped letting love be a leash. I ended with this. They said I was too old to understand, but what they didn't understand was that I built the system they abused, and when the system broke, I didn't rage, I simply rebooted. The room rose to their feet. Some were crying, some were smiling, but every single one of them knew what I meant, because being older doesn't mean being obsolete.
What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping family drama, shocking betrayals, and the revenge stories you won't believe.